In this lesson, we're going to be looking at nested routes, and we'll start by asking the question, how do we map actions to URLs with a single resource? Which might sound a little complex, but what we're talking about here when we say resource is typically a noun, and in our case, we're talking about an event. And we want to be able to do things with this event, which we call actions. These are usually verbs, such as listing the event details, or registering for the event, or editing the event. If we're using good URL design for each of these actions, the first one might be located at event/the ID of the event. To register, we'll go to event/to/register, and to edit the event, we'll go to event/to/edit. We'll build out the functionality for this in two different ways, but the result will look something like this, where we can click on an event and navigate between the register, edit, and details page. In our solution, we need to ask where to place these components. We'll keep them in their own folder to organize them by resource. So to look at the event details, this will be in source view event/details.view. Notice we're not calling it event details.view. We're already in the event folder. We don't need to say event again. To register, we'll create the register.view component, and to edit, we'll create the edit.view component. Now our question is, how do we create and route to these views? In this lesson, I'll show you how to solve this in two ways. First, using very basic routing. And you'll see in the solution there's some problems, including lots of duplicate code in each component. We'll solve this together by using the view router feature called nested routes. Let's dive into our current application. Here in the views directory, we'll create a new folder called event. We'll then bring our current event details component into that folder. We'll rename it to just be details. Then we'll create two more components. First, the register.view component and the edit.view component. If you're not familiar with our event details component, let's take a quick look at it. This component receives the ID prop, which it uses to get the event information from the API using the event service. This returns the event data, which we store in the event reactive object, and this updates our template to show the event information. The first thing we're going to do is paste in our event navigation. The first one shows the event details. The URL will look something like this. Then we link to our register component. And finally, we link to our edit component. We'll edit the router in a moment to create these routes. Now we'll copy and paste this into our register.view. All we need to change in here is the content. And we'll just put register for event here. We'll paste into the event component and change it to edit the event here. Now we need to go inside of our router. In here, we're going to change the path to our event details. We'll keep the name event details though, for namespacing. Then we'll create import statements for both register and edit. We'll copy the event details and then paste this twice for our register and edit. And then we'll simply add the path to register, change the component that path is loading, create our edit path, and load the edit component. Now let's go ahead and run this application. And if we jump into the browser, we'll see that we can now call up an event and navigate between register and edit and details. Everything seems to work, and the URL changes appropriately. As you probably noticed, there's a lot of duplicate code going on in each component, both the navigation links and calling the API. But how do we solve this with nested routes? First, we're going to create a layout for our event components called layout.view in the event directory. This will contain the navigation for each event page, as well as the API call for fetching the event. We'll then send the event into our children components, details, register, and edit. I want to mention that we kind of already have a layout inside of our app.view. That's our base layout. And now we're creating an event layout. So if we look at our web page, we can visualize that the app.view gives us our top navigation. Then our event layout gives us our event title and navigation. And finally, our details child component gives us our event details. Let's implement this. First, inside of the event folder, we'll create our layout. Then we'll copy the details.view and we'll paste it into this layout. So in here, we're going to go ahead and delete the details. Here, we'll put a router view directive and send in the event that we fetch from the API down below. This is where our children components will be displayed on the screen. Now, inside of our details.view, we can delete all of that navigation and just contains the details of the events. Notice we have 2 root nodes here. We couldn't do that in View 2. And then inside of our script tag, we can delete everything except for receiving the event prop. That's the entire event from the layout that this component will receive. We will copy that code, and inside register, we'll just paste it in and change the template to register for the event here. We'll copy that and then paste it inside of event and change that to edit the event here. Now back inside of our router, we'll copy the event details route and change it to event layout. Then we'll specify a children array. It's here where we'll nest our child components. Then we'll paste in the event details route, delete the path, and delete the props. Having this empty path means that this component will be loaded at the root path of the parent, which is simply event/id, like event/2. Then we'll cut out these routes and paste them inside the children array. We'll need to change a few things. We can delete props true, and then we'll get rid of the part of the URL that it's inheriting from the parent. The register URL will still be event/2/register, and edit will still be event/2/edit. The only thing left to do is to import our layout component. Now back in our browser, we can see that we can call up an event and navigate between register, edit, and details. We have the same functionality, but now our application has less duplication. I was going to end the lesson here, but I was speaking to Eduardo San Martin Morote, who is the maintainer of View Router, and he showed me how to eliminate even more code. If we jump back into our editor and take a look inside the router index, I want you to notice here that the ID is required in order to load each child path. And because of that, we can make an optimization. Inside of our layout, we can delete the params ID from each router link. And I'm going to save that, and it'll put them on one line. What's going on here is that since ID is required for each child path, if ID isn't sent in, View Router will look and use the ID parameter that is present in the URL. So back in our browser, everything is going to work just as before, except now we didn't have to specify the parameter ID. Thanks for watching. For more information about nested routes, be sure to check out the ViewRouter documentation.